Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, and joining myself and Mikey McCubbin today, we've got L Sporting Director Pete Smith back in the building.
Hi guys, how are we doing? Yeah, Season's up and running.
It's an exciting time, isn't it? It's all go, 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 and I've got my coffee in hand. It's the final week of the window. And what we're doing today on today's show is we're ranking every Premier League club's biggest transfer rumour as it stands right now. And please, this video will take a little bit of time to get edited, maybe coming up to 24 hours, so we'll try and be as up to date as possible, but there'll be loads of opinions flying about in 4 different categories. Love the rumour, like the rumour, not sure, and not a fan. But Mikey, why don't we kick off with the biggest saga of the summer, which has been Alexander Isak's protracted move to Liverpool. It's getting to the final stages of this window. If Liverpool do sign Alexander Isak, is it worth remembering just how special this player is and what sort of difference he could make to Liverpool? Or are you more of the idea that they potentially could have strengthened in other areas?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, Isak obviously like an amazing player, arguably the most complete striker in the Premier League, although I think, people have been sleeping on Erling Haaland's all-round game, I think, and as we've seen in the first kind of games of the season, and also at the Club World Cup, we saw how capable he was, not just as a goal scorer. It has been the saga of the summer. I feel like it's been a while, like a long, long time since we had a saga this mad, and for the kind of money that we're talking about as well, and it's deadline week, so by the time people are watching this at home, things may have developed further, especially given that Newcastle are trying to get Wissa in, have had bids rejected for Strand, Larsen as well. In terms of how important it is for Liverpool, I think this is what's interesting is that at the start of the summer, it really, or when this move first got talked about, it was like, well, yeah, this is the title guarantee, getting someone like Isak in, 23 goals last season, 21 the year before in the Premier League. There aren't many centre forwards over the last 10 years who guarantee you 20 plus goals in the Premier League each season. You're speaking about players like Haaland, Aguero, Harry Kane. Like, they don't come about very often. We've had plenty of strikers score 20 plus in the Bundesliga, for example, or La Liga, not necessarily go to England, but go to another club and struggle to replicate that form. So, yeah, absolutely, like, he would take that attack to another level. The question is that we've seen Ekitike have such a great start to the season for Liverpool. 3 goals in 3 competitive games. Like, his all-round play looks amazing. This is a guy who, is as much of a next Alexander Isak as there is out there in terms of his style of play, in terms of his physical build, in terms of his finishing ability as well, which has come on a lot since, he moved to Frankfurt. And yeah, he's been electric at the start of the season. And I guess my only concern would be is, like, Isak going to Liverpool, does that block Ekitike's development a little bit? Because it's not, he's only 2 or 3 years younger than Isak. It's not like he's, 19, 20 and he can just wait around. Like, Ekitike is in the process of exploding. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on this, but that would be my one concern, I guess. Ekitike can play on the left, but do I want to see him on the left? Not really. Like, he's looked amazing at centre forward for Liverpool. Could they play as a front 2? Potentially. But then, what does that mean for Salah? What does that mean for Wirtz? Maybe Wirtz, it maybe even suits him a little bit more having 2 in front. But yeah, I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, because obviously there's the Guehi, big Guehi links as well. And, defence seems to have been Liverpool's more of a problem for Liverpool at the start of this season too.
Yeah, we should definitely cover Guehi and the incomings that potentially would arrive at Newcastle if Isak did depart. But just on that Ekitike point, I think having seen him look so electric at centre forward, I think it'd be a massive shame to see him now shifted to the left-hand side as well. And most Liverpool fans that I speak to on social media, they way prefer Gakpo on the left-hand side than as a 9. So it does feel like Ekitike will just be instantly sort of relegated to the bench. And look, there's a lot of games coming up. Isak has had injury issues in the past as well. Yeah. I'm sure he'll get minutes. But having looked so electric at the start of this season, it does feel almost a little bit of a shame. But having said that, with Diogo Jota's sad passing, with Nunez having left the club, with Luis Diaz having left the club, they've effectively brought in Wirtz, Ekitike and Isak if it goes through. So it's not like Liverpool have suddenly gone absolutely crazy in the forward market and swooped up everyone. It's just been a very expensive, forward overhaul. And then in 3 years' time, where you're having to look into a post-Salah future, you've still got 2 nines there as well. Gakpo will still be there, and Wirtz could potentially play on the right-hand side. I think what I've seen so far from Liverpool is that they are slightly struggling with playing with a number 10, because it's been obviously so long, and Klopp and even Slot last season, their midfields were really based around pressing, work rate, and McAllister and Szoboszlai obviously have a lot of quality on the ball as well, but they haven't necessarily found Wirtz in the best positions just yet, and I think that is going to be the key for Liverpool's season, and whether Wirtz eventually reverts to the left-hand side, Gakpo is benched, is something we'll have to follow. But I suppose, Pete, just finally on Alexander Isak, there was talk on Monday Night Football with Thierry Henry and Jamie Carragher that Jamie Rubin had sort of face-to-face talks with Alexander Isak. Is that what your sort of information is kind of hinting at the moment, that Newcastle did kind of really try and keep Alexander Isak even as far as this week, or have they kind of accepted the inevitable?
As far as Newcastle were concerned, they did not want to lose Alexander Isak. They do not want to lose Alexander Isak. That was their initial stance, that, you know, £150 million would be their valuation of him, but he's not for sale. He's not going anywhere. We don't want to lose him. We know how many strikers they've missed out on in this transfer window when they've tried to preempt it and perhaps bring in a high-level player like Ekitike themselves to anticipate a potential sale of Isak. But Eddie Howe's made it clear that even with Isak sitting at home while they're going off to play games, he can still see a future where Isak could be reintegrated into the squad and come back from this isolation that he's sort of given himself. But I think that fan power, we've seen the mood switch so dramatically for a player who scored the winning goal in that Carabao Cup final, delivered that first major trophy after 70 years for Newcastle. For the fans en masse to turn against him, for fans to be going to the games with Isak crossed out on the back of their shirts, I don't think there's an example in Premier League history where a player has been that much of a star for fans, has then tried to angle for a move and take himself out of training, out of contention, and then still turned it around and come back. So for me, as soon as Isak made that move and made it clear that he wanted to pursue that Liverpool switch, it was going one way, really. And I think that's the way we will see it play out before deadline day. And look, Newcastle can cash in. They can hopefully get Wissa over the line, but I think they still need more. And as for Liverpool, look, I think the advert, their first 2 games have been an advert for why they might not need Isak, and we've seen Ekitike be brilliant, as you guys mentioned. I was there at the Community Shield when he got off to an absolute flying start, and Gakpo, so underrated this summer, people just not talking about the impact that he has. Obviously, Liverpool fans appreciate what he can do from that left side, but I think you find a way to make it work. As you mentioned, lots of games coming up, big Champions League games. Isak and Ekitike can't be expected to play or start 60 games on their own, so I think rotation, great option. And, you know, if they don't get Isak over the line, Liverpool, they will need to sign a centre-forward, because Slot has already referenced that he has to protect Ekitike in these early moments. He's not had a full pre-season, and if he got injured, then what, you're looking at a Chiesa as a number 9, or maybe Salah coming in as a false 9 or something like that. So, yeah, I think if Liverpool can get it done, they will. I think Newcastle, begrudgingly, will have to say goodbye, but they might have a lot of money in their pocket to go and try and reshape that squad.
Okay, before we move on to Newcastle's potential incomings, we need to categorise this. Love it, like it, not sure, not a fan. Now, I think it's quite difficult to definitively say right now, because we don't know whether Marc Guehi is going to go through, and that feels like, you know, if Liverpool are distracted by the Isak deal and they don't secure other areas of the pitch, notably centre-back, then I'm probably dropping it down to I like it. But on the base level, as just Alexander Isak joining this Liverpool side, despite the issues with Ekitike, I'm still going love it.
Oh, I love it. I think it is, as Mike has said, it's almost a guarantee of goals, and it just strikes terror, I think, into their title rivals as well, to know they've got that firepower up front. I mean, if we're going to talk about Guehi, can I talk about that? Because I think Liverpool need to hit pause on that transfer right now. I just don't think it works. I know Konate's not made a great start, and in the same way that the way Ekitike and Gakpo have started, you think, well, maybe they don't need Isak. Maybe with the way Konate started, you think, well, they need to get Guehi in quickly. But look, Guehi plays on the left side of defence for Crystal Palace. Yes, he's right-footed, and yes, he's probably got the technical ability to adapt and move over and learn those angles, playing on the right side alongside Van Dijk as well, could coach him through it. But this is a World Cup year we're in, World Cup season. Guehi wants to be playing every week. He's not going to displace Van Dijk, who's as imperious as ever. I still think that Konate is a great option for Liverpool in that right-back slot. Unless they go to a back 3, which they could do, and you know, as Van Dijk gets older, you could see him sitting in the centre of a back 3 and commanding things from there. with Guehi on the left, and
Might help
Guehi
them out with
continues in
Kirkes
his,
and Frimpong as well.
and then you've got gives you some cover, defensive balance, which they've been missing with Kirkes and Frimpong bombing forwards. I think that adds up. But right now, it requires Guehi or Liverpool to make a substantial change in the way they play for it to work. Plus, whatever fee you're going to give Crystal Palace, 40 million upwards. Whereas Guehi out of contract at the end of next season, could be on a free. Palace don't want to lose him on a free, so I couldn't see a situation where he stays at Palace, maybe signs a new contract which has a release clause for next summer, which is favourable to Palace and Liverpool and Guehi. And then, if he moves next summer, almost everyone gets their way. Then Liverpool get a top centre-back who can future-proof that defence. Palace get their money, and Guehi gets a season of game time going into the World Cup, England's first-choice centre-back, and then gets a big move next summer.
Do you not think there's like similar problems there though, in terms from the Liverpool perspective? If you're saying that you wouldn't necessarily fancy Guehi stepping into that right hand side of defence, would it not just be the same next year? Because ultimately, whether or not Konate leaves next year, whether or not he signs a new contract,
Sure.
Van Dijk, I still back to have at least another 2 top seasons for Liverpool.
I wonder if by next season you get to a point where you start thinking about rotating Van Dijk. He maybe doesn't play every single Premier League, FA Cup, Champions League and Carabao Cup game.
Yeah.
Okay, he probably won't play all of those games now, but those top games you have that option of rotating and resting him and managing his minutes, because right now if you take him out of the team, that Liverpool defence looks pretty vulnerable. I mean, it's looked pretty vulnerable
Massively.
already, hasn't it?
Fair enough. I'm more of the opinion that I think he will get enough minutes to be picked in England's World Cup squad, even if he goes to Liverpool right now. And I think Liverpool really need him. I think the way that Konate started the season, look, it's only 2 games. Got to also factor in that apparently Ibrahima Konate was one of Diogo Jota's best friends in the dressing room. That might have a big effect as well. He's obviously been linked strongly to a move to Real Madrid. Maybe that slightly distracted him. He just looks really out of sorts. And also, as we mentioned with Wirtz, not necessarily lighting it up just yet, the midfield in front of him has changed so much from last year, where it was Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai pretty much every single game. So there's other factors involved, but I think if you could get Marc Guehi right now, that is a pretty complete window, it would have to say. Yeah. I mean, Mikey, Marc Guehi to Liverpool, you get a final say. What's the category you put in?
I would actually put it in love it. Guehi. I do think he's capable of backing up Konate as well on that side, and I think just the leadership that he brings as well to that. I know like Liverpool, they're not bereft of leaders, but you have someone who come in who's fresh off being a FA Cup winning captain, that England experience as well. I just think it's another really strong character to have in a dressing room in what is going to be like a much tougher title race than last year. I think we've already seen. I think it's going to be. 2 games in, it's hard to say exactly how the season's going to go, but you expect it to be more of a 3-horse race this season.
Okay.
I would say love it, but maybe on average, maybe it goes down to a like it.
Let's put it down as like it. Let's put it down as like it. I think Pete was protecting Marc Guehi's interest primarily, which I do understand. I mean, we've talked loads about Liverpool throughout this entire window. I think it's good to talk about Newcastle next, because if Alexander Isak does leave, it does look like they've got 2 moves lined up in Johan Wissa and potentially Jürgen Strand Larsen, or at least they're pushing for Jürgen Strand Larsen. I think Johan Wissa obviously feels much, much further along. I mean, Mikey, these are 2 Premier League proven goal scorers, particularly in Johan Vissa's case. There feels like that's quite a nice guarantee of 2 great Premier League strikers to kind of rotate. Yeah,
absolutely. I think even if Newcastle were to keep Isak, I think Wissa would be a perfect backup for him.
I think Wissa's been seen as like the Callum Wilson replacement.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of similar, not that much younger than Callum Wilson. I think he turns 29 in September. And he's just a pure goal scorer, isn't he? So much was made about Bryan Mbeumo last season. Wissa was actually the much more impressive goal getter in many ways. Wasn't on penalties and scored 19 goals from 18.5 expected goals. Like the only player in the Premier League to beat that was Erling Haaland, who got I think 18.8 expected goals. Like he was a more effective goal scorer than Isak anyway, at least in terms of getting into positions statistically for a Brentford side who are not at the level of Newcastle as an attacking outfit. He'd be great at Newcastle, style of play wise. I think just being provided for by Alanga and Anthony Gordon, he'd be great. So yeah, I think Wissa would be, and also like he is a great price as well. His contract's up next year. 40 million, 45 million is really the best that Brentford can hope for. I know they're after 50 to 60. I just don't think that's going to happen unless he signs a new deal. That looks really unlikely at this point. So this is something I really expect to happen. Strand Larsen, I guess, is more of a difficult one. Like Wolves are really holding out for it seems to be like 60 plus. And I don't know whether he is a 60 plus million striker at this point. He is like 4 years younger than Wissa. 14 goals and 4 assists in the Premier League for a struggling Wolves side last year. He's really impressive, and he was really impressive at Celta Vigo before. In terms of his clinicalness, there's basically no one on his level last season. I think his shot accuracy was the highest in the Premier League last season, and so he overperformed his XG by a fair amount. So I guess you can take his numbers with a little bit of a pinch of salt. However, super clinical, 6'4", like much more of a physical threat than Wissa is in terms of a box presence. That's something that replaces what you miss with Isak going. Proven after a season, great numbers at Celta Vigo. His shots did come down in the Premier League at Wolves. That would be my one worry. But then at the same time, like Wolves were not necessarily providing loads of high quality chances last season. You had Cunha carrying them through the first half of the season, scoring screamer after screamer, and there weren't necessarily that many natural creators in that team. So in many ways, Strand Larsen, overperformed what was expected of him, and I mean it would be an amazing fee for Wolves to get, given what they spent on him. I think Wissa's more of a guarantee. Strand Larsen's a great prospect, and he has that Premier League experience. But for £60 million, that's what Man United paid for Sesko, who is being touted as, or has been touted for a long time as, a future world beater. Like, is Strand Larsen a future world beater at 25? Like, no. But would he be absolutely fine in this Newcastle team? Yeah. And if they're spending the Isak money on both of them, you're future proofing that front line a bit, or not even future proofing. You're just patching it up in what is a difficult situation, having to get in 2 centre forwards in the last week of the window. So yeah, I'd say I like both of them. I'm not particularly against it. I just don't really like the fee for Strand Larsen if they're gonna have to spend over 60.
Yeah, I think that's the element, isn't it? Because for so long we've talked about Newcastle and PSR issues. This is their first massive sale of the kind of this new era, and you want to get it right in terms of these replacements, because there are other areas of this Newcastle squad. Although I would say if they get in these two, they have really strengthened in a lot of different areas with Malik Thiaw, and Jacob Ramsey feels like a really natural fit for an Eddie Howe midfield.
It's not a bit of a disaster window.
No, absolutely not. It's just how it all played out. It was so public, going after target, and having quite a few difficulties landing them. But it doesn't feel like, say, if the Isak deal ends up being 130 and you're spending 110 on Strand Larsen and Johan Wissa, who's approaching 30, that's a big financial commitment on 2 players, and they kind of got to work quite effectively. I think that's the issue with Callum Wilson having left on a free, is they had 2 places to fill. The Isak deal was going to go on, and it's left them in this quite pressurised situation. Let's talk about a deal to Arsenal that kind of came out of left field this week in Piero Hincapie. Now, a lot of social media users have kind of leapt to their keyboards to have another go at Arteta for signing another defender. But in Jakub Kiwior leaving, potentially, in Alexander Zinchenko leaving as well, they've signed a really top prospect to replace 2 outgoing players. So whilst it is easy to take the mickey on a sort of surface level, this one actually feels like it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, a bit of a caught by the heat wave maybe, just suddenly signed a couple of attacking players and quickly got back to bringing in a centre-back. But I think it makes sense from squad building as well. It looks like Kiwior could be on his way out, which... Yeah, I think he did really well last year when he came in, when they had those injuries, played really well against Real Madrid in the Champions League. Incredible. What an asset he was for them then to step out of nowhere and deliver those performances for them when they really needed them last season. But I think if you bring in Hincapie, and you've got Calafiore there as well, obviously Zinchenko likely to leave, it feels like an upgrade in that department, but so much strength and depth. Now, Calafiore's been starting at left back. I was there on Saturday for their game against Leeds, and playing that inverted midfield role, left back role, coming into midfield, Calafiore, and it looks like they see him as the left back this season, with maybe Lewis Skelly, who's started both games on the bench, maybe moving more into midfield and trying to recapture that position that he had in the youth teams coming through, and using those skill sets as a proper midfielder rather than stepping into midfield, which would then allow Hincapie to be either a backup for Gabriel on the left or Calafiore at left back. So Hincapie, comes in massive experience, even at a young age, having won titles with Bayer Leverkusen in that Alonso season, of course, and then adaptability, which Arteta loves. He always mentions that whenever he signs a player, they can play in different positions. He loves that versatility that those signings give him. Carries the ball, so he has that potential to bring the ball forwards, which I think Kivior didn't have in his locker. I remember Jamie Redknapp pointing that out on some of the coverage last season when he was trying to play that left-sided inverted role. Another upgrade for. It feels like it's a lot of money in terms of buying a backup or strengthening your squad. I think Hincapie probably warrants around that £50 million mark, but it does feel like Arsenal, when they were weighing up whether to get in Gyökeres, whether they were going to get him over the line, and people were pointing out, well, you've spent all this money on defensive midfielders and defenders, and now can you find the money to sign these top quality strikers? I just wonder, will it come back to bite them further down the line in terms of next summer, in terms of can they find a budget if they need to find another attacker? But for right now, clearly, just strengthens that squad, and it's all the pieces are there, aren't there? No excuses. Really I went to the Emirates on Saturday, and there was a little notice board outside one of the cafes there saying, time is now. No more excuses, Mikel. Go and go and deliver.
You to pay for your coffee. No,
no more excuses.
I know that Pete Smith. He never pays for his lattes. I totally get what you mean, though. It feels like signing Eze and Hincapie in a week has just completely changed my mind about who has won this window. I think Arsenal have had by far the best window. Yeah, they look so complete now. And yes, you could probably argue about like a real natural left winger, maybe like a Rodrigo-style player, or in dreams like Rafa Leao. But we had David Ornstein on the transfer show in here a couple of weeks ago, and he was basically saying that was all intermediaries. Arsenal never really went in that deep on Rodrigo. They've never shown any interest in Rafa Leao. And now you're looking at a squad that has added a ready-made starter level, even if he doesn't start, and Eberechi Eze. Gyökeres has got off to a good start. Let's see how he adapts there. They'll have Kai Havertz coming back to rival Gyökeres at some stage. You've now got Marslow Skelly competing with sort of Mikel Merino to be Declan Rice's understudy in the left eight. Like, this depth is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And all across the back line, Ben White is on the bench for Urian Timber, or Hincapie's on the bench for Calafiore. Mosquera is backing up the Saliba. This squad is a super squad.
Well, and the belief, Dougie, as well, because at the Emirates when Eze was unveiled, the joy among the Arsenal fans, of course, with the Tottenham saga as well involved in that, but the joy for them to have him in the team. One thing I would say, though, is that Martin Odegaard getting injured, Bukayo Saka getting injured in that game, walking away from that game on Saturday, you're thinking, has this been a really good day for Arsenal? Because Gyökeres has scored a couple, Eze's been unveiled, Max Dellman's come on and looked electric and so exciting. But then those two old reliables, key players, aren't there, and they're not going to be there against Liverpool this weekend for that huge game. And Arsenal off to a perfect start, 6 points, but could they go into that international break if they get a bad result against Liverpool? Just thinking, injuries again.
I totally get what you mean. Definitely last year I'd be like, no Odegaard, no Saka for away at Anfield, really tough task. But after the summer they've had, and Madueke having signed relatively early, Eze the kind of feeling around that move, I think you can kind of put both those in, and they should still be able to cause Liverpool a lot of issues defensively. So I think Arsenal can, even if they don't have those players, go into that game with a lot of confidence. So for Hincapie, I know it does seem like a lot of money for a backup, but I think it does make a lot of sense as well. I mean, I'm tempted by Love It. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
Oof. I don't know if I can say love it for someone who's not necessarily going to start. But it is mad. I mean, like when you look at like Arsenal's back line, that would be most teams in the Premier League's first choice back line. Maybe aside from Liverpool, it is pretty wild. Maybe aside from City as well. But
so where would you guys put it?
I'd put it in like it.
Okay, bring me back down to Okay, guys, we've got loads of transfers to get through, so let's do these next ones a bit quicker. Nicolas Jackson is a much talked about player this week. Clearly third choice now at Chelsea. There's talk about Aston Villa. There was talk about Newcastle at one point. Bayern probably feels like the most likely. I mean, Mikey, Nicolas Jackson became a bit of a figure of fun, but actually if you go underneath the bonnet, he's actually done okay given his level of experience when he came into Chelsea. And do you subscribe to the idea that Chelsea would be better to keep him on board because of the amount of games they've got this year, and he's a pretty able third choice? Or do you think just if you are getting 50, 60 million pounds, that's such a big profit?
It's a decent profit. It's less than double what they paid for him. I don't know. I think Chelsea have sold really well this summer, and I don't think they necessarily do need to sell him. I mean, I think Chelsea may have even posted a profit so far this window. And have managed to bring in so much quality, and the squad just looks way more balanced than it ever has done, really. To then sell Nicolas Jackson, who, for all the criticism he's received, has put up double figures in consecutive Premier League seasons. I don't know. It maybe does feel a little bit trigger happy, especially given that João Pedro, I don't think is necessarily going to be playing all his minutes at centre forward. If the Xavi Simons deal doesn't get through, then there isn't really a like-for-like backup for Cole Palmer aside from João Pedro. So it's a lot of pressure on Liam Delap at that point. I think it might have even been you, Pete, earlier in the window saying that Chelsea are always planning for 3 strikers this season. If Jackson goes, then who do Chelsea get in? Do they then rival Newcastle for Strand? Larsen, I don't think there's just that striker out there. Maybe Egeber at Strasbourg, but maybe given how the summer's gone, given that he doesn't seem to be in Maresca's plans really, maybe if you get 60 million for him, then that's as good as you can get at this point.
I just wonder with Jackson if you go back to those red cards. So back end of last season, gets sent off at Newcastle. Is they're missing for the last 3 Premier League games of the season when Chelsea desperately trying to get into the Champions League spots. Then Club World Cup comes on against Flamengo, gets sent off within a few minutes. And at that one, was it Delap who came in then, and then João Pedro soon after, and they just seized their opportunities, didn't they? And look, this is our chance to prove that we can be the out and out number 9 for Chelsea. I think. Palmer, his connection with Jackson is really good. He appreciates those runs that he makes in behind. But there's just been a lot of big misses, haven't they? I think, as you say, ultimately his goal numbers are not bad, but they should have been a lot better from the chances he's had. Lots of yellow cards. And I just think those red cards, Maresca is a pretty ruthless manager. He speaks nicely in the media, but actually you see the way he treats the players, that bomb squad that just don't get involved at all and have no way back once he's decided they're not involved. Feels like Jackson's probably getting into that situation. I think the Villa connection is really interesting. So, going to speak to Unai Emery last season ahead of the Chelsea game for Villa, and he gave Jackson his debut at Villarreal, brought him through from the youth team. And when Jackson signed his new contract at Chelsea in September, who did he thank? Unai Emery for his tactical and technical development he gave him. Now, everything we said about Jackson there, about getting sent off, etc., Emery says, loved his focus. I loved how he prioritised his football. He worked so hard. He made progress. He tried to learn and develop all the time. When it spoke to Pape Cissé, a Senegal striker, who's so delighted to see another Senegal striker in the league, Pape Cissé says this is a player who arrives at Chelsea, is criticised, as you say, has setbacks, but he works hard and improves and gets better. So I think in there, he's still got a very good Premier League striker and potential to be a very good striker. He's 24, just turned 24. So a lot more potential to come out of Nicolas Jackson if he can find the right home. Unai Emery, Aston Villa, could be the right home for him.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout because Villa desperately need some sort of attacking bodies through the door. I know Evan Gesson arrived earlier this summer, but between their entire team so far in those games against Newcastle and Brentford, they've only created 1.3 XG, which is the second lowest in the league, which is only above Wolves. And Unai Emery, given the fact they've got Europe as well, he desperately needs more options. And with that connection to Jackson, that makes a lot of sense. From a Bayern perspective, on paper, he doesn't necessarily feel like a finished Bayern player, but then it's to play back up to Harry Kane because Matthias Tell left permanently this summer, Müller, Sane. I know they signed Luis Diaz, but they've clearly been searching for another forward as well. So from their perspectives, as a Bayern club, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring in Nicolas Jackson to play back up to Ollie Watkins or back up to Harry Kane, and sometimes maybe alongside Ollie Watkins too. But from Chelsea's perspective, I don't think it leaves you as strong as it should at the end of the window, given all the spending that you've done and the quite clever squad manoeuvring if you're still left with Liam Delap and João Pedro. So if I was Chelsea, I'd keep him, unless you have to for financial reasons. Because I do think there is also the element of Is anyone offering him £60 million next summer if he's played third choice for a year? Probably not. So that's the way up, isn't it? That is the way up.
Yeah.
I mean, where are we placing that category-wise?
I think
feel like
to
there's been a lot
Villa,
of different...
I don't know, in some ways, like I just think he's almost the perfect backup to Watkins. I think they can swap in and out really, really easily. I think they've got a lot of similar attributes. His link-up play is really good. Can play on the left, especially with Villa's, playing with not such wide, wingers. I think he could play on the left of that attack as well. So I do really like it. Yeah,
let's go with like it. From Chelsea's perspective, though, I'll add not sure. Okay, let's move on to... Well, let's stick with Chelsea and talk about Garnacho and Xavi Simons. We can maybe do this as a duo. I mean, Mikey, from a Man United perspective, Alejandro Garnacho joining a rival, even if your clubs are in different situations right now. Is this painful to see him potentially leave?
Yeah, I think it would be the most painful departure from United in quite a while, in terms of someone going to a rival club, someone who has real top level potential, someone who looked like the future of United's attack just 12 months ago.
I saw someone post that photo of Højlund, him and Mainu the other day.
Yeah.
Actually this morning.
Yeah.
And
just a year ago they were considered untouchables. They were considered the only players, in that squad last summer who would, had no chance of being sold. And now Højlund, could be at Napoli by the time people are watching this. Mainu, who knows what will have, the developments there, feels like an exit could be quite difficult.
You talk about Garnacho being the most painful exit. Would Mainu top it?
Yeah, Mainu will top it just because he's Carrington boy. Garnacho, in terms of what he's achieved at United over the last couple of years, I think the painful thing with Garnacho is that, in a hypothetical future where things don't work out for Ruben Amorim and United hire another coach who probably plays with more conventional wingers, then you're looking at it and you're like, we had one of the world's best young wingers at the club. I know antics away from the field have kind of muddied his time at United, but in terms of his output, like, you can't really argue with it. Only Ahmad scored more non-penalty goals for the club last year in the Premier League, and Garnacho was playing a lot of the time in left wing back, left inside forward, like positions that he wasn't really used to.
Off the bench a lot.
He's a developing young player, off the bench a lot, and that was with his decision making not being all there yet. Once he can click into gear and is more mature with his decision making in the final third and is taking fewer pot shots from outside the box, like, he could be seriously scary. Like, I honestly think if Chelsea signed Garnacho and he becomes their regular left winger, like, I think he would rival anyone in that. Like, he would rival Cole Palmer for goal involvements. I think. I honestly think so. Yeah.
Do you think he's primed? Do you think he's primed to be the next one after McTominay, after Rashford, after Anthony, to go out of the Man United environment and suddenly look $1 million again? Because how much of that misbehaviour meant, like throwing a strop when he gets subbed off? Did he leave the stadium like Ronaldo? Did he leave the stadium?
Or at least
obviously not training away from his teammates now. How much of that is him misbehaving, or how much of it is a result of him being a victim of the environment at Man United?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think there probably is there's a certain amount of emotional maturity that you have to reach to reach your potential, and I don't think Garnacho has done that. Having said that, we talk about the antics from Garnacho's point of view, but last October we saw those videos of him coming out after the game and United fans like criticising him to his face, and it was then reported that he had been really hurt by that. And
he didn't celebrate, I think, the next time he scored.
So it was and he almost didn't feel worthy. So this is he is still a kid, and so I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. Honestly, I think that the thing about the United environment, I don't know if it does apply to Garnacho that much, because up until midway through last season, Garnacho barely had anything against his name as a Man United player. I think it really did just unravel quite a lot, in the last kind of 2 months of last season, to be honest. So it's not like with, say, someone like Højlund, who I expect to go to Napoli and become rejuvenated after what was like a real nightmare entire season last year. Like Garnacho, broke into that United team and it instantly looked like a star. And it's only really been the last little bit of his United career that's gone sour. So that, I think that's what makes it more painful. Whereas Anthony, question marks from the start, Højlund, question marks from the start. I don't even think that Rashford, when he burst onto the scene at United, had the potential of someone like Garnacho. So yeah, But maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm a fanboy.
Not a fan, clearly.
Yeah.
Not a fan from the United perspective.
Well, yeah, but massive fan from a Chelsea perspective. I
perfect
honestly I think he's great. Like I think Gittins looked really impressive in pre-season, but I do think Garnacho's like wealth of Premier League experience I think would make him first choice above Gittins. Xavi Simons, again, like a more complete player than Garnacho. Maybe, you know, the fact that he can play on the left and through the centre and be that backup to Cole Palmer. Maybe more of a fan of that move in some ways. And, you know, La Masia graduate as well, like, you know, technically is at a higher level than Garnacho.
He's dealt with so much in his career. Like, this is a guy that was on sort of like widely talked about as the best wonder kid ever when he was like 14. He was like the Enga Moa of back then, but even to a bigger extent. I think he was given like a €1 million contract when he was like 15 by Nike. So Xavi Simons to actually emerge and carve out the career he has amidst that attention and make a lot of brave decisions, you know, going to PSV, re-signing for PSG, then going to Leipzig. I've got a lot of respect for Xavi Simons, and I think it'll be a great addition. And it's another sign for me that Chelsea are shopping this summer in a bracket above where they've been. You know, it is young talent, sure, but it's kind of more established young talent, like a Garnacho, like a Xavi Simons, like a João Pedro, than the kind of punts they were taking a couple of years ago, which were clearly more for sort of shifting around and PSR purposes. So I think Xavi Simons would be a top addition to Chelsea. Mikey obviously doesn't want to see Garnacho go, but seems
where
like
would you two put both of those? Like, you know, regardless of what I've said, because I'm clearly I'm backing Garnacho quite a lot, but I don't know whether
I'm probably more not sure about Garnacho in terms of all this list that we're going through, just because of his attitude issues at Man United. And I'm a big fan of Jamie Gittins, particularly in the first half of last year. I thought he was absolutely exceptional, and I'd probably rather just see Jamie Gittins play consistently there. But it depends what the fee is for Garnacho as well.
Yeah, I think he'd be a good fit for Maresca football. But I think Sancho last season, you know, probably didn't have the season that we thought he might do going and playing at Chelsea there. So will Garnacho be able to have a better season than that? If he does, I think it's a success. But you know, obviously £50 million. I think it's probably a good sign for Chelsea. I think Simons is a more sure thing in terms of his career, his trajectory, his quality, his class. The fact he went to Leipzig to take on a leadership role in that team. Okay, they had a pretty miserable season last year, but you know, his attacking output was still pretty solid. Obviously playing on the left side, you know, as a left-sided 8 then, so it gives them options in terms of, as you say, covering Cole Palmer. I remember seeing him watching him in the Euros against England as well. A real quality player there to open up defences for Chelsea as well. So I think Simons coming to the Premier League looks like it would be a great deal for them.
Okay, let's move on to Spurs, and it's been a crazy window for them. A lot of failed moves and swoopings in and hijackings, etc. But it does look like they are still going to be busy in the final few days of the window. I mean, everything on the pitch is working pretty well, but they just hasn't necessarily completed the squad for Thomas Frank that he was wanting. Savinho and Maghnes Akliouche seem like their top targets at the moment. I mean, the price for Savinho that's being quoted, Pete, is now getting up to sort of €70 million. That does feel like a lot, but this is a talent for sure.
Talent for sure. Pep calls him extraordinary. You know, Pep loves him. Pep wants to keep him. They paid 30 million for him last summer. Man City. This doesn't feel like a Daniel Levy signing for me. This is sort of spiralling to a point where you're thinking, are Tottenham really going to pay this much money for a 21-year-old who scored one Premier League goal last season? I'm not sure that adds up for Daniel Levy. I think Akliouche makes much more sense in terms of the price tag, in terms of what he's done over the last couple of seasons, in terms of his goal involvement rising steadily over that period, the Champions League experience he's got. I think that adds up a lot more for Levy. Surely we know how sort of measured he can be and how he is always looking for that best deal. As that Savinho price keeps going up, I keep thinking this is not looking like a fantastic deal for Tottenham at that point, because you know, he showed last season that he is a talent, Savinho. He showed that he can beat players, he can cross the ball, he's good with dribbling the ball at his feet, but that output is not there yet. It might come there, sure, it might come there, but is that a £70 million gamble that Daniel Levy is really going to take at this point?
Yeah, I totally agree. It does feel like a lot of money, especially when you look at the sort of fees that Man City have got for other players who are further along. You know, they sold Julian Alvarez, but he'd won a World Cup, and that was £80 million. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a massive difference in price ranges. And even like Raheem Sterling, yes, that transfer didn't work out to Chelsea, but he didn't cost nearly as much as Savinho, and he'd achieved so much more in his career.
I think that's two examples there, and Alvarez perhaps not so much, but still, the players that Man City are happy to sell. Pep has this line that if you want to leave Man City, the door's open, go. We'll take the right fee. But how many of those players have left Man City and the buying team thought, yeah, we've got a player here, Gabriel Jesus at Arsenal, Zinchenko at Arsenal. And then after about a season, you realise this is why they weren't quite that top level for Man City. We can see now the reasons why Man City were happy to sell them for the fee that they did. And, if Tottenham did sign Savinho, I'd be wondering, is there a reason that Man City are happy to cash in at that price and think that actually was this player going to get to a Premier League winning level?
Yeah, I think the thing that probably is important to note is I think because they've part-owned Girona or own the Girona and part of the Man City group, I think they got a really good fee from originally. Right. So that buying fee looks really low, especially after the season he'd had when Girona finished, third? And I think he had a similar amount of goals and assists as like Vinicius Jr. that year. It was absolutely insane. So I remember seeing that, I was like, that is way too low, like £25 million for that player coming off that season. But I think there is a lot to get excited about his game, Mikey. The raw ingredients are there. I just don't think he necessarily consistently was ready to make impacts across 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think Jeremy Doku was the only player who was averaging, more progressive carries than him in all of Europe last year, and Jeremy Doku's just like off the scale. And maybe that has something to do with Man City's style of play last year as well. They were being relied upon a lot. But yeah, I mean, City fans absolutely love Savio. I think like his performances, especially towards the back end of last season, got a lot of plaudits, and quite rightly. I think, I don't know, like £70 million or 70 million euros, if you think that Tottenham were willing to spend close to that, for Eberechi Eze, who obviously is more complete, but is, 5 years older, 5-6 years older than Savinho. If
would you have any doubts about Eze being able to instantly succeed at Spurs?
Of course. But I don't think, I don't know what does instant success look like at Spurs, right? You've got someone in Savinho who is like absolutely box office, amazing dribbler, great at running with the ball at speed. To play under Thomas Frank, who's great at maximising attacking potential from players. It adds depth to the right hand side. Like I would love to see, what he can do in that Spurs team, and also to add to the fact he can also play on the left, Savio. So go some way to making up for the sale of Son this summer as well, with Kudus there as well. I just think, they'd be absolutely box office to watch. But you can say the same thing about Akliouche. I think that's the thing. With Akliouche, I think, that's where I'm really in agreement with you, Pete, is that, he's a little bit more into his development. It's a better fee out of Monaco. He's super entertaining to watch. Loves a step over. Really good. I think one of the things that stood out even from an early... from his early days breaking into that Monaco team was that he was really good at breaking through low blocks, really good at unlocking defences, whether that be through dribbling or creating chances from outside the box. He's really got that in his locker. And at 23 years old, I think he's ready for the step up. And also, I think what he has over Savio is that he is a right winger, but he drifts into the central space a lot. So you could imagine Thomas Frank utilising him as a bit of a 10, as a little bit of a Mikkel Damsgaard kind of player.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with Maddison out, and obviously Kulusevski's out for a period as well, Tottenham are after a number 10 before that deadline day. So if you could save yourself £22 million by going for him rather than Savinho, then is that money you can put towards a decent number 10 that you can bring in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were dead set on that number 10 as well. They were really searching after Nico Paz at Como as well. He's going to stay there now, He's going to stay because Real Madrid want him back next year. So should we go Savinho at that fee? Not sure.
Akliouche, I would
like it for Akliouche. Love it for Akliouche. Okay, nice one, Mikey. Let's go with that. Let's carry on moving. Let's talk Gianluigi Donnarumma to Man City. Now, this isn't anything against the player, who I do really rate as a goalkeeper. It does feel like a really strange decision and a strange fit because he's not a natural ball player with his feet. He's not amazing at claiming crosses.
Is James Trafford a natural ball player with his feet after that pass out?
No, but then you've already committed to James Trafford. This just feels very panicky last few weeks of the window. Or maybe you could flip it and be like, it's a market opportunity because they didn't predict that he wouldn't sign that new deal with PSG, and PSG acted so quickly and were like, look, Lucas Chevalier is Ligue 1 experience, has experience in the Champions League as well. I think a lot of clubs could have done with Lucas Chevalier this summer. And look, they just instantly went Chevalier for the future. Perfect. But Donnarumma is now available. And are you spending that amount of money on 2 goalkeepers in the same summer? It just feels like strange squad making. So it's less about Donnarumma at City. It's why are you getting Trafford and Donnarumma in the same summer when their ages aren't that different as well?
Do you not think he should be going to Man United? I think Donnarumma is
talked
such
about it
a
on the
better
Lowdown last
fit.
week.
Right, okay, cool.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Carry on. No.
No. I didn't mean to cut you off though, but
I've got to go and watch that one.
it makes so much more sense. It makes so much more sense. We're in
Sorry.
agreement with you. No. There's no reason you should watch every minute of every show. That didn't mean to come out very aggressive. He makes a lot more sense for Man United.
I think he does. I think he comes in like star name, amazing shot stopper. Suddenly, all that nervousness that you're getting from Bayern at the moment goes out the window. Nervousness from Onana goes out the window. Presumably sell Onana, keep Bayern maybe as the backup.
If you can sell Onana.
If you can, yeah. He's got that big team experience. So playing at Old Trafford and the weight of expectation at Man United is not an issue for him. Build-up's obviously different, not as reliant on those short passes out from the back. He's got that superstar name that just fits with Man United, I think, for me, so much more than Man City. This Ederson leaving, it just feels a little bit strange to me. I still think he's got a lot more to give. Like a couple of seasons ago, I thought Ortega was, rated him so highly. It feels like maybe his moment has just passed a little bit. Since that save from Heung-min Son, the best ever
forever,
Premier League save, the most important ever Premier League save. That's his claim to fame for his time at Man City. But yeah, so look, they're looking to move to the next generation. But I just feel like Ederson as their number 1 this season would not be a problem. I really don't think that would be an issue. And James Trafford as number 2 playing backup.
I guess the one counter argument to this would be if Ederson does leave and he wants that move, and Donnarumma comes in, I guess that the logic I would see is that City under Pep, they've won 1 Champions League. Given how much of a preeminent force they've been in European football under Pep, they should have had at least 1 more Champions League, right? And I think before Pep leaves, he really wants to secure another Champions League, especially in the new format. With Trafford and Donnarumma, I feel like, and with more Champions League games as well, I could quite easily see it being like Trafford, at least initially, being the Premier League goalkeeper and Donnarumma being the Champions League goalkeeper. And I don't know, I just feel like he's like Donnarumma in a tournament is just he's a little bit of a cheat code. Like look at like the performances he put in for PSG last year. Like I don't think they get to the final without him. Italy at the Euros, was it 2 or 3? Was it 2 penalty shootouts or 3 penalty shootouts that they got through? Like he's almost a guarantee of a penalty shootout win, and in big moments in against big opposition, like he comes up clutch for all his deficiencies in other areas. Like he does give you that.
Like, yes, last year in the Champions League, Donnarumma was phenomenal, but he also cost them against Real Madrid a few years ago when he gets caught with the ball at his feet. Yeah. I think Karim Benzema then scores, and it basically cost PSG a chance to go through. And you're also looking at 35 million euros or whatever the fee is for Donnarumma when they're planning on starting Matheus Nunes for an entire season at right back. It just doesn't feel very necessary when you've already signed a goalkeeper for £30 million already. I don't know. It just feels like City in the last few years have made quite a few quirky transfer decisions, and whereas we used to know them as really consistent, just consistently nailing them, always had a succession plan, it just feels like I think City makes strange moves. But let's move on in the goalkeeper department. Donnarumma, I think from at least not sure to not a fan personally for me. Okay. Let's go with that.
Cool. Right. You can put in not a fan. We haven't had one in there.
Let's have not a fan. If someone needs to deserve to be in there. Let's talk goalkeepers for Man United, though, because Seny Lammens, Mikey, this actually looks like it could be done. There is a lot of interest as we record this from Galatasaray, who've supposedly offered more money, but Lammens wants to join Man United. We talked about it briefly on the transfer show this week. Yeah. But is he someone that would interest you at Man United? Is he too inexperienced to go straight in? What are you thinking?
I don't think so necessarily. Like it obviously is a step up going from the Belgian Pro League to the Premier League, but I don't know, that the last few years has proven actually that Belgium is a really good really good market for young players, and actually like there's a pretty high success rate of players going to the Premier League. I can't remember whether I think it might is Belgium now like higher in the kind of UEFA rankings as a league than the Portuguese league.
They've been competing against each other.
So like I mean I don't think we should like sniff at a young player coming over from Belgium. Obviously it's the goalkeeper position at Man United. There's such a spotlight on you, but like he's super tall. He's great at claiming crosses. His save percentage is amazing. I think he made the most saves in the Belgian Pro League last year, post shot XG, goals prevented really good 15. As well. Crazy stuff. And like I think when you're Man United goalkeeper, you kind of need to be at that level. That was kind of what De Gea was doing in his prime at Man United, and I would argue actually Man United defensively from open play are in a much better place than they were 2 years ago. Obviously from set pieces that's another issue, and I don't actually I think the set piece thing, it's not just the goalkeeper. Like there does have to be more work done in general to protect the goalkeeper in the box. Like Bayern Deer, obviously first couple of games of the season, like unacceptable to be flapping at crosses in the way that he has been, but nevertheless, I don't think there's the general defending from set pieces among the United back line. It has been great. I don't think he's been given the best circumstances to catch the ball. So yeah, I think Lammens for the fee as well. Maybe a bit of an overpay out of that league for a goalkeeper. Yeah, probably is. But United do need another option there. It feels more and more like United aren't going to get that player to sort the midfield out this window, which is a real shame. But goalkeeper and midfield are the two clear problem positions. If United can get one of them sorted, then that's something at least.
Yeah, it didn't feel like anyone at Man United was watching the Lowdown this summer, because we suggested a midfield fix about once a week, which would have been nice. I agree with you. Let's go like it for Lammens to Man United. Pete, you get decisive say on West Ham's midfield situation. They've supposedly offered a loan move for Ibrahim Sangare as we filmed this. They've signed Magassa out of Monaco, and they're also apparently looking at Yves Bissouma. What do you make of Sangare and Bissouma?
Sangare, yeah, good signing. I think liked him at Forest last season. I think the big problem with that West Ham midfield, having covered their first two games, is no energy, no intensity, no bite in that midfield at all. They got overrun by Sunderland, got overrun by Chelsea. And
all the best sides.
What I put into our coverage on the Chelsea game, Chelsea were only started pre-season 2.5 weeks ago before that West Ham game. Because of the Club World Cup, they'd been on their holidays. They come back straight into Premier League football. And they're not outrunning by kilometres and by sprints made, but just by the intensity and the way they were playing in that game. They just had so much more than West Ham in terms of that performance. And with the ball, Potter ball is not particularly exciting, and that's the feedback from West Ham supporters who were very disgruntled at London Stadium on Monday night. But without the ball, they just look so vulnerable as well. So massive fix. I would not say that Yves Bissouma is the player who comes in and gives you intensity, aggression and bite in your midfield.
This is the wrong type of aggression.
Well, this is the player who was repeatedly taken off by Ange Postecoglou last season. I was there when he did it at Fulham. He took him off at half time and he said he liked him as a person or whatever, but he was like, this is a player who just switches off during games. He's just on the fringes of matches. He just doesn't get involved. So I've taken him off and tried. I think towards the end of the season he had a bit of a pick up and he sort of got a kick up the backside to get going in that Europa League campaign. But I just don't see him as a solution. A player who's already been dropped by Thomas Frank for lateness. Is this really what West Ham's midfield need? Like a club getting pretty close to crisis point already, 3 games into the season. They don't need a player who's coming in who's a bit lackadaisical or not putting it in as much as required. This is a team that needs more players like Jared Bowen who are going to give 110%, who are going to be railing with fans because they're so passionate about what's going on that pitch, giving everything. Watching Bowen in that Monday Night Football game, he just needs help up there. Mm-hmm. He's trying to make things happen. There's one point where he's trying to overhead kick in the box. He's trying anything he can do to try and force this ball into the goal for West Ham. And you look back through the rest of the team, you just think, I don't see the same passion, desire and intensity from some other players in that team.
I agree with you. Bissouma, I don't like that at all. I think Sangare makes a lot of sense, but I don't know why Forest would let him go. I know they've signed Douglas Luiz, but most of the signings that Forest have made in the last few weeks have all been 10s or right wingers or strikers, really. So I'd keep Sangare, Kiki about, but I join you on the Bissouma concern there. Let's talk about Hayden Hackney to Everton. Now, Everton are linked with a number of different midfielders. Hayden Hackney, I think, is really, really good. He's been playing regularly in the Championship for the last 3 years. We actually interviewed him, me and Mikey, in our previous role at Football Daily, and seemed like a really mature personality, actually quite a shy guy, but like very, competent and confident in his own ability, let's say. And last year, for a Borough team that ultimately underperformed and Michael Carrick ended up losing his job, he was absolutely superb. So he was 6th for passes completed in the Championship last season. He was 1st for passes into the final third. He was 1st for progressive passes. He can also mix it defensively as well. And Everton, having signed Dewsbury Hall, Grealish, Dibbling, if you sign Hayden Hackney as well to kind of play alongside Guehi and then potentially James Garner in midfield, if Mikolenko eventually comes back in as the left back, they're in a pretty good position. So I absolutely love this move for Hayden Hackney. It's not the loudest right now as we record this. I'm surprised there's not more interest from Everton. Maybe they're just sort of sorting out their finances for the final week, but I'm a big fan.
I'm a fan as well. Should we go through the last few quick fire?
Let's do it.
I think Raheem Sterling to Fulham we've got next. I don't know
about
this.
30. He's only 30. It's nuts.
And he'll be back up to Iwobi, I guess. If he goes to Fulham.
Natural wide man. I quite like it, but mainly because I love Raheem Sterling and I want him to finish his career on a more positive note. I say finish his career. As I say, he's not 31 until December.
But when he's been playing since 16, every time on the big stage, that's getting on for a 15-year career, isn't it, already? And I just think that, last summer we were sat here, Arsenal got a fantastic deal, they're paying him half his wages or something like that. They've got him out of Chelsea, he can add so much to that team, experience, quality, blah, 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 get rejuvenated. Couldn't even get in the team when they had injuries in his positions by the end of the season.
That's what worries me.
So you guys going not sure?
Look, Fulham have got a track record of reviving Willian. Like when Willian looked like he was absolutely done, he came back to the club again, obviously connections with the club, loves the club. Marco Silva got some fantastic performances out of him. So they have got a track record of rejuvenating players, even younger players as well, who've had difficult times in Smith Rowe, Iwobi, Nelson. But I struggle to think with Sterling. I don't think across that period with Arsenal, he might have had 1 or 2 games where you saw the old spark. But
it's few and far between.
Yeah, I'm with you though. Look, we want to see him perform well. We want to see him play well.
I think he's obviously, like, his family situation. I believe his son's in the Arsenal academy, so he hasn't moved abroad. Whereas like a couple of years ago, I think Gush moving abroad would have been great for him. Yeah. Let's go with not sure for now. I mean, Mikey, let's talk about Jeremy Pino to Crystal Palace. Yeah. This is actually a done deal, or set to be completed imminently, for around 30 million euros. This is a player that's had a phenomenal reputation a few years ago, had some injury issues, but has generally played pretty well for Villarreal for a while now.
Yeah, amazing. I really love this. I think, like a few years ago, he was kind of Spain's next big thing, really, wasn't he? In the pre-Yamal era. But yeah, like injury problems, hasn't quite kicked on in the way, but he's in the way that we would have thought he would have a few years ago. But yeah, he has been playing like at the top level for a long time now, and he's only 22. I think it's a real coup from Palace, to be honest, especially given, in the context of like selling Eze and then, redistributing that money into the market to get, Pino for 3 times less than what they sold Eze for. They've still got a lot of money to spend on the attack from that sale. And of course, sold Elise last year as well. So, yeah, I think Pino's great.
Play on both sides as well.
Can play on both sides. Relatively, he's right-footed. Has generally played on the right, but I imagine he'll take up that left 10 position with Ismail Assar playing as well as he is. So yeah, I really, really like it. Won't necessarily set the Premier League light straight away, but I think long term he'll be great for Palace. Yeah,
I love it. Bilal El Khanous now, are they? That deal's collapsed, so that's moved on.
Yeah, for sure. Axel Disasi to Bournemouth or Sunderland. I like it for both of these clubs, to be honest. I think Axel Disasi's had a really difficult time at Chelsea. I think he's kind of messed around slightly, let's say, by them then signing Tosun. Chalobah was in and out. It doesn't feel like he's had a settled position or a settled centre-back partner for lots of it. And yes, he's not the most glamorous on the ball, but I think in terms of his ability to win duels, win aerial duels, I think he could really do a job for Bournemouth and Sunderland, for sure. And he was phenomenal at Monaco for years, alongside Badiashile, and they look like a really top duo. I think Badiashile's got way more mistakes in him than Disasi too. Yeah, I'd take him at Sunderland for sure, and I think Bournemouth aren't in the position to turn them down either. So I like it for both those clubs.
I think it helps with the Bournemouth refit in defence. Obviously, Huijsen's gone, Zabani's gone, Kirkus has gone, but they've got Truffert in, haven't they? They've got Diakite in. If they can get him in as well, then it's refreshed that back line. And look, as you say, Premier League experience in Ligue 1, good, strong defender. I think the fact that he didn't really force his way into that Villa team in the second half of last season on loan there probably suggests that his level is not at not that high.
Yes,
but he could certainly do a job down that position in the Premier League.
Get up to the northeast. Right, let's talk about delaying Bakwa to Leeds or Nottingham Forest. Now, I really like this for Leeds. I'm not sure about this for Nottingham Forest. Yeah. This is a left-footed right winger, and they've signed Amari Hutchinson to play in that kind of area. They've already got James McAtee. They've signed Arno Calamwendo.
Dan and Doy's had a great start to the season as well.
Dan and Doy. They've got Igor Jesus has came through the door once again. It feels like Forest's scouting team have just gone on, search engine and just typed in forward and we'll get all of them. And I don't know whether that's part of the issue with Nuno Espirito Santo not quite liking the direction of their transfer business right now. Is it more agent-led since, what's his name from Arsenal? Since Edu came in with Kia Jarabshian. So I'm not quite sure about this from a Nottingham Forest perspective, as good as he looks. But Leeds, I think, need more options in that forward area. And he was excellent for Strasbourg last year. Really exciting dribbler as well. Left-footed, plays on the right, but can also play on the left. I think it'd be good for Leeds. Pete, a very active situation at the moment is Brentford, looking at Max Beier, because just before we started recording, Fabio Silva's move to Dortmund was confirmed, which means Max Beier is now behind Guirassy and Adeyemi and Fabio Silva as a 9 there. And Brentford, with Johan Wissa looking like he's likely to leave, they needed another forward for sure.
Yeah, 100%. They need to get someone in, and if they can get a player of his experience in, then that's fantastic for them. Hands up, I had big concerns for Brentford at the start of the season. I think they've done really well to get off the mark and get that first win, because that will give them confidence, give Keith Andrews confidence as well. Went down and saw him before the first game of the season, where he's very optimistic, and of course they got a bit of a punch on the nose in that first weekend, didn't they? And suddenly you're thinking, all those exits they've had, all those players leave this summer, how much of disruption this is going to be. Of course, Thomas Frank as well, such a huge figure at that club, and the club shapes around his ideas really by the time that he left. How are they going to cope in the post-Frank era? Look, they need to bring a player like that in, and perhaps that's a signal that they're getting close to a position to sell Wissa, or a fee where they're going to sell Wissa. You can see these sort of domino effects coming in at this stage of the transfer window, can't you? But look, signs of life at the weekend from Brentford, and maybe it's not going to be such a terrible season for them as I might have thought it. And look, in fairness, Keith Andrews pointed out to me, he said, we've got Queven Keller in for Flecken, and he's worked with Kelleher with Ireland, and his indication was that he's a top keeper. You've got Jordan Henderson in for Norgard, obviously lost the captain, but you've got Henderson in, absolute huge leader in that team. Then he talked about Thiago, who was so injury ridden in that season last year, and they've got such high hopes for him in terms of what he can do. I got Thiago. And then he's talking about players like Fabio Carvalho. He worked with a lot Andrews last season when he was set-piece coach on delivery and things like this, when Carvalho was on the sidelines, not really getting much first-team football under Thomas Frank. So he saw a lot of opportunities there, and their fullbacks are back as well. So, yeah, look, if they can get Beier in, get some quality in that number 9, challenging Thiago as well, then suddenly maybe things not quite looking.
Yeah. I think this hack looks actually quite deep. Like if Bayer's in there, because he can play all across the forward line. Sharda looks to be kicking on. Had a great season last year. Ouattara obviously got his first goal. I really like it. Max, but he physically he's tall and super quick. The fact that Brentford are signing the player that Dortmund were signing last year to lead their forward line, or at least be back up to Guirassy, is
shows the strength of the Premier League.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad.
You're right. Ouattara is a good signing, isn't he? And if they can if Sharda and Damsgaard can produce the performances they were producing last season, then they're in a decent spot.
In some ways, I think losing Damsgaard this summer would have been a bigger disaster for Brentford than losing Mbeumo or Wissa, just because replacing someone like that who was so key to the way that they played. would have really, I think, ruptured the kind of
He has
the attack there.
He's got everything in his game, hasn't he, Damsgaard? That work rate's absolutely phenomenal. Okay, things are looking up for Brentford. Hopefully things are looking up for your team too. But that is the end of the Lowdown for this week. A bit of a whistle-stop tour of every club, really. So don't you be in the comments complaining that we didn't cover your club, because we did in some way, shape, or
I don't know if
form.
we did cover every single club.
I feel like we gave it a good go. If we didn't cover every club, get in the comments and complain about it. Thank you so much to Pete, as ever, for joining the Lowdown. Mikey and me will see you probably next week, where we'll be probably reviewing what happened on transfer deadline day, which is on Monday. Yeah, keep across that on all Sky's platforms, and we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.